Now friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Since the arrival of the new trilogies, there's been an underlying theme within Star Wars that is really hard to ignore. For some of you guys out there, it might be obvious. For others, it might be a shocking revelation. Today, we're going to be talking to you guys about the Jedi Order's darkest secret. From the minute I first saw The Last Jedi's first trailer, one thing caught my eye. It was a small bookshelf lit by a spot of natural light hidden within the gnarly recesses of some kind of natural cave-like structure. There is something extremely beautiful about this shot, and the roots inside this structure seem to emanate out from the books as if they were the seeds of some hidden truth. The next shot shows us a close-up of the Jedi logo fixed on some kind of paper or parchment-like cover for a book. It was paper, not flimsy plaster or some other synthetic material we might find in Star Wars. Right away, I knew this was a very, very ancient book. I thought maybe it was the very source of material that Luke had been searching for all those years, leaving the rest of the galaxy far behind him. We actually did several videos speculating about these ancient texts. Maybe the Jedi Temple on Ahch-To needed a master and apprentice to unlock them, like the ones on Lothal or Malachor did in Rebels. Maybe these ancient texts preached the teachings of the ancient Jedi who believed in both the dark and light side of the Force and thought that an individual needed to find balance within themselves. But I soon forgot about all of this after seeing The Last Jedi and Luke's apathetic attitude about everything. Whatever Luke read in those books, whatever he had learned over the years, seemed to have turned him away from the Force. And we're reminded of this in the film very clearly.
Let the past die.
Or at least that's what Rian Johnson wants. But why is Luke so ready to discard the past of the Jedi? Why is one of the most upbeat and optimistic characters in Star Wars all of a sudden the most downtrodden? Well, it has to do with the Jedi Order's darkest secret, which is hidden within the recesses of that tree library. And it's not just any tree, it's a Unity tree, a Force-sensitive tree that used to be found within the confines of the Jedi Temple, which just happens to be symbolically dead and falling apart on Ahch-To. Now, the texts are mostly unidentifiable by their covers, and although my Arabesh is pretty rusty, it's definitely not written in Galactic Basic. But after The Last Jedi novelization came out, we were given some important information. Two of the texts within the tree library were called Aeon Namika and Ramagan. Ramagan seems to have its roots in Sanskrit. The words break down into Rama, which has two contextual meanings, either darkness and night or enlightenment. The second part, Gan, comes from Gun, which means revolve. So the meaning of this is pretty clear. You have Rama with its double meaning, which is light, enlightenment, and darkness, and then you have the word Gun, which is revolution. So this is clearly a book that preaches about the balance within the Force, or the Great Jedi School. Aeon Namika is broken up into the word Ion and Namika. Ion is a Greek word that means life, age, or generation. You might be more familiar with its Latin transliteration, which is eon, or the English word eon, which means a long period of time. Namika comes from the Greek word namik, which means customs, law, or principle. So Aeon Namika combined together means some kind of universal truth. Maybe it talks about the fabric of the Force and how it's interwoven within society, your basic heady Jedi scripture stuff. Maybe it's here that Luke learned how to transcend the living Force and join his body to the cosmic Force, allowing him to pull that crazy long-distance apparition move during the Battle of Crate. But more than likely, it includes an abridged version of ancient Jedi history. Now, we know that the Jedi Temple had its own library, including a highly guarded section of what is regarded as sensitive or even dangerous texts. The Jedi Order has always been a restrictive and conservative sect, obsessed with control, and it's never been above hiding the truth either from its own members or the public. So it's very possible that these ancient texts are hiding something that the Jedi Order doesn't want anyone else to see. During what is commonly known as the 100 Years of Darkness, many thousands of years before the rise of the New Order, a rogue Jedi began embracing the dark side of the Force. He began understanding that true power couldn't be reached through the passive ways of the Jedi. When the Jedi Order found out about this, they exiled him from the Order. This rogue Jedi would become one of the first known Sith. Now, obviously, this is the canonized version of the story, and it's purposely very vague. Now, when Disney came into Star Wars and started canonizing select pieces of Star Wars lore and making others legends, it mainly focused on getting rid of past works that were deemed too chaotic for continuity reasons. And most of the Star Wars content that came out after 2014 would become canon, with a few exceptions. And that was the Old Republic MMORPG expansion story content and a series known as Dawn of the Jedi. Something both of these pieces of Star Wars lore have in common is that they both take place thousands of years before the events of the three trilogies. I take this as meaning that these stories happened so long ago that they've been forgotten and they've become legends. And as we all know, most legends hold some kind of central truth.
Malachor has always been off limits to Jedi.
Why?
Old legends. Stories told to us as younglings in the temple.
There's always a bit of truth in legends.
And we've seen time and time again canon content drawing something from past legends, whether that be Thrawn or the Teräs Käsi martial arts form in the last Solo film. So what does legend say about the beginning of the Sith? Well, there are a few legends, including the legend of the Legion of Leto. 24,500 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Jedi Order had just formed from the more balanced Jedi, as we mentioned before. One Jedi Knight, called Zendor, was stationed on the Jedi fortress world of Ossus. Zendor was considered that the Jedi Order was drifting towards extreme views. The ancient Jedi had practiced the way of both Ashla and Bogan, aspects that represented both the light and dark side of the Force. But now the Jedi Order was drifting more towards the teachings of Ashla, and Zendor was afraid that by ignoring Bogan, the Force would become imbalanced. He petitioned the Jedi Council to start a school dedicated to the teachings of Bogan, but was denied. Zendor then quietly left the Order and established his own school on the planet of Leto. The followers of the school would become known as the Legions of Leto, and they drew from the ancient teachings of Dai Bendu, Jedi, and other Grey Force schools. Their school was structured in a very similar way to the Jedi Order, and quickly they attracted a very large following. Not surprisingly, the Jedi Order saw this legion as blasphemous and sought to wipe them out. This was the start of what is known as the Great Schism. The Jedi Order formed a massive army and waged war on the Legion of Leto. Zendor wanted to contain the fighting to decrease the amount of bloodshed and took the battle to Ossus. Zendor's outnumbered forces were eventually defeated after several battles, and he was killed in combat. His remaining followers were hunted down and killed as well. It's said that the canon Jedi during the 100 Year of Darkness consider themselves the spiritual successors of the Legion of Leto. The story helps us understand why the Sith Order became so heavily focused on destroying the Jedi. This version of the story teaches us that the Jedi Order struck out against the dark side users first. It also tells us that the Jedi Order were the first ones to bring the Force out of balance by completely ignoring the dark side. As a matter of fact, Zendor really did preach a moderate version of the Force. When he approached the Jedi Order, he wanted to start teaching Bogan within the confines of the Jedi Order's institution, but because they were so fearful and closed-minded, they pushed him away. The massacre of the Legion of Leto and the systematic hunt and execution of every remaining member gave all future Darkside Force users the impression that the Jedi Order was not a reasonable entity. And in that frame, we begin to understand the reasons behind Darth Bane, Darth Plagueis, and Darth Sidious's actions. And it's also pretty clear that before the Legion of Leto was forced into the battle, they were pretty content on leaving the rest of the galaxy alone. And here we see the fundamental misunderstanding that the light side of the Force is synonymous with good, and the dark side is synonymous with evil. To have a better understanding, let's look at the codes of both of these orders. First, we're going to start off with the Jedi.
There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force.
Then we have the Sith.
Peace is a lie, there is only passion. Through passion I gain strength. Through strength I gain power. Through power I gain victory. Through victory my chains are broken. The Force shall free me.
So the Jedi embrace enlightenment, and it's very similar to a lot of Eastern religious philosophies. It's the idea of removing human-like emotions and attachments and ascending to a higher consciousness. While the Sith are the exact opposite. They embrace everything that makes us human. Passion, chaos, struggle, and power. You see, neither schools of thought are inherently evil. I mean, both schools are capable of evil and good. A Jedi can be completely detached and kill with no emotion for what they believe is the betterment of society. A Sith can save a person's life because of their love and passion for them. And in the end, both sides can be easily corrupted. And it was the Jedi Order's actions against the Legion of Leto that severely corrupted the dark side Force users that came after them. Faced with such an existential threat from the Jedi, the Sith were twisted by their own extreme fear. After all dark side users aren't truly free, despite what their code says, but slaves of their own emotions. Remember how much fear Palpatine had that the Jedi Order would move quick enough to destroy him?
The Jedi are relentless. If they are not all destroyed, it will be civil war without end.
And at the end of the day, the problems with both of these orders is something we can apply to everyday life. The Jedi and the Sith were both extreme organizations. Their dogmatic approach to the Force and life was so far to one side they were unable to reconcile with the other side. Extremism almost always leads to conflict because it prevents their followers from understanding the other extreme. Extremism simplifies things into black and white, and perhaps it makes a chaotic world seem easier to understand, but it's really a cowardly way out of a situation. Because the real world is not black and white. It's extremely complicated, and rarely can we classify or stereotype an individual as just one thing. Sure, he's a Jedi, but that's not what defines him. He's a former slave raised by a single parent, a champion pod racer, and a war hero. Sure, he's a Sith, but that's not what defines him either. He's a former miner who was raised also by a single parent and an excellent soldier and great combat leader. So at the end, it was extremism that led the Jedi Order to its own destruction, and that's why Luke Skywalker is just so pissed off in the entire Last Jedi. Well guys, that is our video for today. Let me know down in the comment section below what you think about my theory. Do you think it's right? Do you think it's wrong? I think it's going to be a part of the Star Wars franchise as it continues to move on. Might be a good thing. Who knows? Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on all the rest of our content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.